Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today here on Point of View. It is our weekend edition. We have certainly a lot to talk about. The omnibus year-end bill, spending bill, has been passed, and there are certainly a lot of comments we're going to make about that. Of course, we've had another Republican presidential debate, and some of the consequences of that certainly are going to be front and center. We'll talk about some of the proposals that were actually put forward, like, of course, restricting the number of Muslim immigrants that come into this country, and much more. And I might just mention, we'll get into the issue of religious liberty, as we oftentimes do on our Friday program. And just before we introduce the round table, I wanted to welcome a new radio station, in some respects an old station that has carried us in the past but has been off for a while, WVCB, which is in Charlotte, North Carolina, 1410 AM. General Manager is Randall Cowan, and they are carrying us, and we are just thrilled to be able to broadcast on more and more radio stations. Round the round table, Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford of Liberty Institute, and Colonel Alan West, who has served in Congress and also is the president of the National Center for Policy Analysis. Penna, we've got lots to talk about today.
Well, we do, and I guess the first topic on the list is the spending package, and just to quote what Ted Cruz said about it, he said, "This funds Obama's priorities for nearly the remainder of his term." Well,
Colonel West, let me get your response, because you've been in Congress. You know how these budget bills are. You've actually seen the sausage made. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, you know, when you have a 2,000-page omnibus spending bill that comes out early morning Wednesday and you vote on it on Friday, how many people actually read that? You know, they did not.
Yes.
And that's what the American people are so tired of. And when you consider the fact that the Republican Party said, give us the House and this is what we'll do. Give us the Senate and this is what we'll do. And you look up there right now, and the Republican Party has the largest majority that they've had since post-World War II. Yeah. And they still have the same business as usual with this omnibus spending bill. When I was up there in Congress, I wrote a letter to then House Appropriations Chairman Hal Rogers of Kentucky. And, you know, I'm a simple guy. I'm from down in Georgia. I went to the University of Tennessee. I jumped out of airplanes. I'm not a very, complex fellow. And I said, okay, there are 12 appropriations bills, 12 spending bills that we have to pass. Can you please tell me the order of priority? I never got an answer. Mm-hmm. And so this is what confounds the American people, knowing that no matter who is in charge, they still get the same old, product in an omnibus spending bill. And the fact that we have a Republican Party with this incredible majority that is still afraid to go to the mat against the opposition party to make sure that we get our fiscal house in order and to restore some sense of fiscal sanity is a letdown. So when you look at this, the refugees, they're going to be funded. The H-2B visa is going to be funded. The Planned Parenthood is going to be funded. Yes. Even all of these crazy green energy, the climate change fund is going to be funded. There was an interesting quote. Nancy Pelosi said, they wanted to go and support big oil, and we got everything else that we wanted. You don't have to have the export ban on oil done by legislation. I mean, you could wait until we get a new president. It could have been done that way. They cannot continue to be afraid to stand and fight. And the government shutdown thing is always held over their heads. And Kerby, you and I were talking before we went on air. The last time we had a quote-unquote government shutdown, only 17% of the government was shut down. Now, what does that tell you?
It tells you a lot.
It's 17% we don't need.
Non-essential.
They're non-essential. So that's what we should
By
be
definition.
looking at.
Yeah. Penna?
Well, Colonel West, I want to ask you, since you've been in Congress, and we had a new speaker take office 6 weeks ago, Paul Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
And when he did, it was somewhat under the understanding that the way things were to be done in the House were going to be different. And one thing was that we would like to see, as you mentioned, instead of one big, huge omnibus bill, that there would be separate votes on the separate bills.
That's
spending
regular
bills.
order.
That's the regular order. And Paul Ryan seemed committed to it, and he may still be committed to it. He's only had 6 weeks to switch things around. And so do you buy that? Because that's what we're hearing.
No, I don't buy it, because this is what we believe in the United States military. You stay until the job is done. I don't care if you want to come home for Christmas. Guess what? Have your family come up there and spend Christmas with you. Let's get this right, because what you're already hearing is that this is what, I inherited. This is what is given to me. We'll do it, next year. Well, this is the exact same thing that we heard, just wait. We will not fund the illegal immigration, the amnesty executive order that the president put out. And guess what they ended up doing? They funded it. So we continue to hear, wait till the next time, wait till this next fight. That was the one thing that John Boehner constantly said in our GOP conferences. This is not the real fight. Wait till the next fight. Well, as a military guy, I don't sit there and say the enemy's charging. So you telling me don't shoot right now? Wait until what? They get within 5 meters of shooting of me? It never makes any sense. And Kerby and I talked about this. Donald Trump and Ted Cruz are going to pull away from the pack now, because no one out here in grassroots, mainstream America trusts the political class, not just of Washington, D.C., but of the Republican Party.
Kelly, I'd love to get your thoughts as well.
My thought is that every person who voted for this should have a primary opponent.
Yes.
We've got these guys with a lot of money. I mean, maybe even the Koch brothers or somebody. They should say, you know what? We're going to fund every single primary opponent to anybody who voted for this bill. That's what needs to start happening. We need to, if people are listening and nobody's running against your congressman and they're voting, then you need to run. Get somebody to run. Look in your church and say, who is the most, the person that maybe God has prepared most to be. This is how our founders used to do it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that I decided, hey, I'm going to run. People came to you and they said, you need to run for office. And, boy, if there's ever a call or a need or a Paul Revere, it's time to get on your horse and get your guns and get ready. I don't know what it would take. You've got the Republicans who have control of the House and the Senate, and yet this bill gives more that Pelosi and Reid wanted than they ever got when they were in control.
That's what they said in the press conference today.
And Schumer was saying
more than the president asked for.
Yeah.
So how in the world anybody who voted for this should lose their seat on the Republican side? The Democrats, of course, they should be proud.
You know who they are. Yeah.
They should be proud they got everything they wanted. But the idea that the other party's in control and they got everything they wanted and more, it just boggles the mind. It really does.
Well, Kelly gave you a suggestion, and we've made it easy for you to follow that suggestion. If you go to our website right now, click on Read More. We have a section there. It says House passes omnibus appropriations, and it shows the roll call vote. And so before some of you guys showed up here, we went through this, and Colonel West and I calculated that as far as we can tell, there were only 2 representatives in the entire Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex that voted against it. Every other one voted for it, Republicans and Democrats. And we'll give credit where credit's due. Sam Johnson voted against it. Roger Williams voted against it. Now, of course, you live in a different part of the country, so you'll have to check and see who voted. But this gives you the vote, so you can actually see who voted. Almost all the Democrats, except 18?
18 Democrats
voted for it.
Yeah.
So if you have a Democratic representative, you already probably know how they have. But then again, you can see where the Republicans did. And Kelly, you've got a very good suggestion. So find out whether or not you can run against
They run
people.
every 2 years. That's the way the House works. Every 2 years, you've got to run again. So hello.
We'll take a break. We have a lot more to say. And of course, we want to hear your comments as well. Privileged to have with us today Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford, Colonel Alan West. We'll come back with more right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
You know, after every shooting, there's the inevitable gun debate, but this time there are indications that the gun debate may be changing. Here are a few examples. First, there is growing evidence that law-abiding citizens have decided to ignore some of the gun laws. We all know that criminals buy guns on the black market and use them in crimes they commit, and there are stories of people living in places like the District of Columbia who willingly violate the gun laws because they rightly assume that being fined for the possession of a firearm is worth the risk when you consider the likelihood of being attacked or killed. Kevin Williamson cites some examples where law-abiding citizens decided to ignore the law. Connecticut passed a law requiring registration of certain firearms, but the citizens refused to comply. The city of Sunnyvale, California demanded that residents hand over firearms capable of accepting magazines holding more than 10 rounds. The citizens of Silicon Valley responded by turning in a grand total of 0 firearms. Second, some previous proponents of gun control are admitting that they really didn't understand the issue. One columnist admitted that she wrongly equated semi-automatic weapons with automatic weapons. She supported the assault gun ban because she felt that it was virtuous and at least I was supporting something. Third, others are criticizing attempts to pass laws prohibiting anyone on a no-fly list from purchasing a gun. This would not have stopped the shooters in San Bernardino, the Colorado Springs gunman, the Charleston church shooter, and many others. On the other hand, it would impact the lives of many people who are on a no-fly list. Senator Ted Kennedy, Congressman John Lewis, journalist Stephen Hayes, and singer Cat Stevens have been on a no-fly list. These are just a few indications that the current gun debate might be different from the previous ones. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
This Christmas, bring home and share the gift of War Room on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital HD, available in stores December 22nd.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Well, they talked about one issue and already have people calling in, so I might as well open up the phones. I suspected that some of you would have some comments about a $1.1 trillion year-end omnibus spending bill. So please take the time, if you'd like, to first of all find out how your representative voted on this issue. Number two, I would encourage you to maybe express your opinion to them, and if you want to, you can express it to us, 1-800-351-1212. What about the political implications? Kelly, I'll start with you this time, and it does seem to me that a few of those Republican nominees are going to have to come out and say something about this, and I think, as we already heard from Colonel West, that might help people like Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. What are your thoughts?
No, I think undoubtedly. I mean, this is what the election's about in the Republican, primary. And the reason why, when you add Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and Ben Carson, you get, 65% or above. And it's the people that are watching this, and they're literally, I'm this way. And it's not that it's like, oh, come on, you're being naive. This is beyond imagination stupid. When you're in control, this is not just a majority of the House. This is a really healthy majority of the House. Probably the best numbers the Republicans have had in I don't know how many years, how many decades. And then it's not that they lost an issue or that they just loaded this thing up like a Christmas tree with everything that the other party wanted and the things they didn't want. And so it's just. It really is baffling that people are this easily led away from their principles. And I think that's what's making America, so, certainly the base of the Republican Party, so angry. So I think Donald Trump, this is what he's speaking into. Ted Cruz, to me, I even think has more of an advantage because the problem is, Marco Rubio, when he ran originally, he was a Tea Party guy, and he's now an establishment guy. And so, having somebody like Ted Cruz who's been elected and actually stood against everybody and refused to go along, so I think it's going to be helpful to him as well because he's been fighting this and against this, whereas somebody might say they're going to do it and then they get in there and you're not sure how they're going to do it. But definitely Trump and Cruz are going to benefit.
I think we might see almost all of the Republican candidates speak against it because they know where the electorate stands. At least they have an idea.
Yes.
But because of the things that Ted Cruz has already done to stand up against the establishment at, great peril, I guess, to his political standing, he has some sort of gravitas for taking that position. So I think it benefits him greatly.
Yeah, without a doubt. One of the things that Ted Cruz has done very effectively in his messaging, he called it the Washington cartel.
Yes.
The D.C. cartel. And there's no better example than what you just saw here, where you have a party that is in power. And like I said, post-World War II, this is the biggest majority that the Republicans have had. And yet they, like you said, they lined up the Christmas tree. The president came out this morning and he doesn't need to go to Hawaii. He just had Christmas. That could save us taxpayers some dollars. But Ted Cruz has consistently been there. And then it's a person like Donald Trump. What people are seeing is that maybe you need that to just bring it back into equilibrium almost. And so he doesn't have to go out there and talk about policy. He doesn't have to go out there and talk about politics because you know what? People don't believe you, what you said, because we continue to hear that every election cycle. And as I said earlier, Kelly, we know what the other side is going to do. And we thought that if we elected this group of Republicans, this incredible majority, that things would start to turn around. And it hasn't.
Can you look down this list? It does not prohibit a green climate fund. It does not defund Planned Parenthood. It might actually provide the funding for net neutrality for some of the EPA issues, as well as land and water conservation, all sorts of different riders, and on and on and on. If you were to sit down, Colonel West, and come up with the worst possible bill for some of these Republican candidates to go against, this is also a Christmas tree, if you will, for some of them, because they can just say on every single one of these points, this violates the principles of the Republican Party.
From a policy perspective, when you look at this omnibus spending package, you would think that it was a progressive socialist majority in the House and Senate that passed it.
Yeah.
Not some people that are saying, we're conservatives and we're Republicans. You would not think that. And the only thing that they can come out and tout that they received is that, the ban on oil exports is going to be lifted.
So,
does that mean you sell your soul for all of these other things?
And even USA Today came out in favor of that. So, that's not necessarily a real conservative issue. When you've got the editorial board of USA Today saying that's a good idea, it's like, okay, well, that one probably would have happened anyway.
Economically, it kind of makes sense right now with the oil being less than $35 a barrel. And the means by which you could leverage those oil resources for, national security and better getting people away from OPEC and Russia. People like that.
Yeah. It's really shocking. And, I do think this is what's amazing is the establishment and the Republican Party has learned nothing. The entire election, the whole public has been communicating. They've been in shock. They're watching Donald Trump. They're watching Ted Cruz. They're like, oh my gosh, these are the people we don't want. And the whole, and it's not just that, they're the winning candidate right now with 25% or 30%. No, you add them together, it's almost 70%.
Right.
And
so you would think they want to do something to say, we're conservative too. Me too.
Yeah.
But there's no Me Tooism in this one, is there?
And instead, they just poked everybody in the eye.
Just unbelievable.
And I guess they want to make sure that Bush, Jeb Bush is defeated, and that Chris Christie is defeated, and that Marco Rubio is defeated. And you start naming down their list because these are the guys they were starting to get behind, saying, well, these are our only hopes. And, they just assured Ted Cruz and Donald Trump, somebody like that is going to win one of the two probably is going to win the election.
Before I came over, I saw the Monmouth, New Jersey poll.
Yes.
Donald Trump is now at 41%.
There you are.
Wow.
There you go.
Let me take some phone calls along the way. And, of course, we want to hear from our roundtable, but I want to hear from you as well. We'll head out to Oklahoma first on the Internet. Scott, what are your comments about this bill?
Well, let me put it this way. I hope I can keep my cool because I am furious. I actually did call my representative, my two senators.
Good for you.
And only one in Oklahoma, it wasn't mine, Weinstein, I may be mispronouncing his name, voted against it. And here's what I told all three. Well, I at least told the staff anyway. Why do you want to fund something if it's illegal, like illegal amnesty? Why are you funding it?
Yeah, and if it's immoral, like Planned Parenthood, why are you funding that? I mean, you can go down that long list of. And when it's ineffective, like some of these climate change funds, why are you funding that? I mean, you could really begin to ask that question, and I'm sure they didn't come up with a very good answer, did they?
Well, they didn't, but the other thing I made a big point on is why are you funding a thing that's which is a hoax, which is the climate control?
Yeah.
And I tell you what, Kelly made a good point. For instance, Langford, who's supposed to be a conservative, voted for it. He's up for a re-election this year. He only served a 2-year term because he's filling in Colburn's last 2 years. He's up for re-election. And you know what? I don't care where you're at in the United States, listen to that point of view. You need to get your behinds in gear, get registered, and start in the primaries, because I'm starting in the primaries, and that's where it's going to be happening, in the primaries. If you don't get in the primaries, you're going to be back to the same old.
Good point. We need to take a break, but when we come back, I want to just spend some time going around the round table and get some more comments. But just before we go to a break, as you know, we've been spending some time encouraging you to give to Point of View, because, again, we recognize that your gift to Point of View will change lives. And one of the illustrations, since we're talking about pro-life, that I love to give from time to time is Lee Weaver. Listened to this program and actually decided to start a crisis pregnancy center. Now it's called a pregnancy resource center. And this last fall here, I had a chance to speak to a huge audience. And as a result, he was very honest about the fact that even as he introduced me, that his real desire to do this was because members of his family said, okay, we're against abortion. What are we going to do to be positive? And so, again, the success of that pregnancy center there in Fort Worth, and certainly all sorts of other pregnancy centers around the country, are just an illustration, again, of thousands of babies that have been saved through a crisis pregnancy center. Of course, his life was changed because he was listening to Point of View, because other people in the past gave to Point of View. And so we just encourage you to please help change a life today with your gift to Point of View. Your life that you change through the gift certainly will change the nation. Go to our website. It says Changing Lives, Changing the Nation. And between now and the end of the year, we encourage you to make a gift. And if you could do it right now, this would be a great time for us to hear from you. And we certainly do need your financial support. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk with Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford, and Colonel Alan West. All that coming up right after this.
Point of View is a team, and you play a vital role. Years ago, a 19-year-old started listening to Point of View. It educated her. It inspired her. And the rest of Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann's story is history. We could tell so many stories, people who are changing their community and changing the nation thanks to Point of View. Make your final shot of 2015 count. Invest as generously as you can. Look for the Changing Lives, Changing the Nation banner at pointofview.net. pointofview.net, or call 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151.
From Provident Films comes War Room. The movie that inspired audiences is coming to DVD and Blu-ray in time for Christmas.
This is my favorite place in this house. I call it my war room.
Prayer is a powerful weapon. War Room on DVD and Blu-ray. Available at Christian retailers December 22nd.
Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Privileged to have in studio today in our weekend edition, Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford, Alan West. And if you would like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. We'll get to those phone calls in just a minute. Talking, of course, about the omnibus spending bill, but we're going to get into some other issues as well. Of course, we had a Republican presidential debate this week. And in the second hour, Kelly, we want to spend some time talking, as we always do, about religious liberty. We have a link here, so if people missed the opportunity that we had Michael Berry on with the coach yesterday, you can watch that. The coach suspended for post-game prayers. We have the Scrooge Awards, and then one from Alan West's website, Good Grief, Look What They Did to Charlie Brown. So we still have some things to talk about. But again, this was a national story about what happened to the coach there in Washington, Bremerton, Washington.
Well, I think this is something that everybody's watching because everybody gets this, and it's almost like a test for the country. When you got a coach like this is the coach we always used to be looking for. You know, the guy who throws his heart into it, who really loves the young men, who yet is humble enough to bow a knee to the Lord. And the fact that this guy's under attack is, I think, just baffling to people. And it certainly was to Megyn Kelly last night on her show, because it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, you can go to the 50-yard line after the game. You can slap the other coach on the behind. You can, say great game. You can do whatever. As long as you don't pray.
Yeah, well,
if you pray,
that's enough. That's it.
When you pray, we're going to fire you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just explicit religious discrimination, and there's no reason. I mean, nobody was threatening the school with a lawsuit. I mean, this was all them, and now they've refused to even sit down and meet with us. So, I mean, they just want to fight. So now the the legal action has started, and there was a ton of media coverage. I know Fox News did a national story on this, Todd Starnes. It was in Breitbart. It was in AP and in 50 to 100 newspapers across the country, New York Times, you name it. So it's something that everybody gets, and so I think it gets a lot of press, and everybody's watching to see, this is the kind of guy that's got to win, and I think everybody's really rooting for Coach Kennedy.
I might just mention we have posted the Scrooge Awards, which you're getting people to vote on. That's one of the many ones. And, of course, you have the state of Georgia's Department of Public Health, and we have Mickey Weinstein.
That's my number one guy, Mickey Weinstein.
Yeah, there you go. So we will get into that in the second hour, but I wanted, since we were on spending, just spend a little more time on that because it's important, Penna, for people to understand how these bills make their way through. And you mentioned something just in passing that, let's explain again, regular order. You don't just dump all this together. You have the different spending bills and you have a debate about each one. And that's the way in which Congress is supposed to work, right?
It's the way they're supposed to work, and it was the way that they're supposed to get back to. And a lot of people were saying they were going to work toward that. So that's why it's sort of like a slap in the face now that the Republicans have passed this. As you mentioned, they only had a couple of days to debate the final version of it. And they've passed it. And, there's some things we didn't mention that were in it or not in it. For instance, it doesn't defund sanctuary cities. That's a controversial area.
Yes.
It doesn't block his climate change, Obama's climate change regulations. It does nothing to address his executive amnesty. And, just on and on, not to mention Planned Parenthood and the Syrian refugees are both funded fully. So, we're scratching our heads and we're wondering, well, why are they doing this? And especially James Lankford, the senator from Oklahoma, was mentioned by one of our callers. Our own, one of the local members of Congress, Jeb Hensarling, a leader in Congress, voted for it. And others. So I guess my question, maybe Colonel West, you can just kind of weigh in on this, is why? Why would these conservatives or so-called conservatives support this?
Well, what happens is that they get told this is what it means if you don't vote for it. And they get all of these different things held over their heads. As a matter of fact, the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Mac Thornberry, I read his statement, kind of trying to justify his reason. This is what it does for the troops and everything. Well, we get it. We understand the things that the federal government is supposed to do, which is to protect us. Mm-hmm. Now, this is a very simple argument. How can we say that we're going to get rid of 40,000 active duty soldiers from the United States Army, but yet we're going to give $535 million to Planned Parenthood? That's a simple argument to make. But the tough thing up there is that if you're a chairman, you're considered to be on the team.
A committee chairman.
And that's a tough thing to walk away from. But you've got to have the courage of your convictions to do that. And so I think this is going to be really interesting to see what happens. This is not going to be forgotten because of Christmas. These people need to step out front.
No, because we have a presidential election that starts really full steam at the beginning of the year.
This is not going to be forgotten. And I think that the Beltway makes people believe that there's a certain way that you can act, and it has nothing to do with outside of the Beltway. When these folks head up out of Washington, D.C. today, they're going to find that there's a constituency that is very angry. They're going to get lumps of coal in their stockings. And we've got to hold their feet to the fire on that.
Since I'm the oldest one around the table, as usual, it would be an opportunity to go back to Ronald Reagan. I remember when he was giving a State of the Union address, he had these stacks of paper, and it was all at least a foot high. Mm-hmm. And he said to the Congress, if you dump another one of these on my desk, boom, he says, I will veto it. And so this is, I think, what the next Republican presidential nominee needs to say, is that we will not allow another omnibus spending bill to come through here, because up until right now, that's been either you've been continuing resolutions or it's been an omnibus spending bill. But back to this idea of regular order, each one of these 12, isn't it 12?
12
are supposed to be voted on individually, are they not?
Absolutely right. And so I know that people are going to say, well, Paul Ryan just took over 6 or 7 weeks ago. I don't care. Okay, stay up there, develop a plan that you're going to get those 12 appropriations bill voted on, and you send each appropriations bill over to the president. Once you get it voted on, you have to have a conference committee between the House and the Senate committees, with the jurisdiction. But that's how you do it. And that takes you all the way up to the December the 31st. That's your job. That's your responsibility. That's what we're paying you to do. Not come up with 2,000 pages that I guarantee you the 316 people that voted for it, they didn't read it. Yeah. They did not read it. Now,
just take this and move this into your regular life. And let's say, everybody who's listening, let's say you have a business and you hired somebody to sort of run your books for you and make sure everything's taken care of. And instead of like doing the entries and, keeping track, they dump some huge, wad of information with all kinds of garbage in there at the very end and say, well, you just got to take it all or nothing. And, you'd say you're fired.
Yes.
Well, that's what we need to say to the representatives that do that. I mean, it's irresponsible. I know they've done it in the past, and this is why people are so angry. But the idea that after hearing what the American people are saying, that this is how they're responding, they clearly don't, they're tone deaf.
Yeah.
And so the only way that they're going to understand is if there are scalps on the wall.
Yeah.
And then people will start to understand, because unfortunately what they care about is their own position and their own power, which is why they would vote for this, because there's no other reason to vote for this.
And real quick, to your point, Kelly, when people out there say it can't be done, that it's too powerful, the only time in history a sitting House Majority Leader was defeated in a primary.
That's right.
And the guy that replaced him voted no.
Yeah. Eric Cantor and
David Bratt.
Yep.
It can be done.
We need more. We just need some more of those, and it's just up to people.
Well, I was also thinking we have two presidents here. The president of the National Center for Policy Analysis, the president of Liberty Institute. If you came with that kind of budget before your board, I got a feeling you would not be greeted well yourself, as valuable as both of you two individuals are, right? So let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll take some phone calls here. But if nothing else, we want to also address one other issue, and that is certainly some of the military issues, while we still have somebody with military expertise. And so we'll get into those. And again, those of you on the line, I haven't forgotten you, but we have such a star-studded cast here today. We'll get to those phone calls in just a minute, so hang on. And if you'd like to know a little bit more about some of the issues that we are discussing today, please go to the website, pointofview.net. A lot of the religious liberty material is there. We have a whole breakdown in the actual $1.1 trillion year-end omnibus bill. Then we have a list of actually how your representative voted on that, and we may even give you an action item a little bit later. So there are all sorts of great resources on the website, pointofview.net. So I hope that you'll take the time to find some of those. But we come back, I'd love to get your comments, Colonel West, about what about these Muslim immigrants and what kinds of things can we do? Also, who do we target when we talk about fighting? And that surfaced in the debate the other night. So there's some really important issues still on the table. Then Colonel West will have to go on to his daily activities, but we'll still be joined by Penna Dexter and Kelly Shackelford. So we'll take a break, and we'll give you a chance to join the conversation today, 1-800-351-1212. But take the time to go to pointofview.net. Find out how your representatives voted, and let them know what you thought. We'll be right back.
Presidential primary season is just around the corner, an opportunity for everyday Americans to influence who ultimately gets elected next November. Citizens can participate in their state's primaries and caucuses to help choose the party's nominee. Those who do this, and also those who make financial contributions to candidates, get a bigger say in who's available to vote for in the general election. That's democracy, and it's a way people who care can really have an influence. Up to this point, the 2016 election and how it plays out has been controlled mostly by the candidates and the media. First, the candidates. There are so many of them. So many on the GOP side remain in the race. Some conservatives are afraid there continue to be too many. They're getting jittery, worried that the sheer number of people in the race, especially the number of candidates who appeal to conservative primary voters, will divide them and dilute their influence. Others worry that Republicans will land on a candidate too early, the wrong one. And then there's the media. Activists, anxious to get involved in backing a candidate, are watching polls and seeing who's getting the coverage. They're frustrated right now that they can't do much about any of it. That's about to change. Morton Blackwell has been in the thick of politics for nearly 40 years. His Leadership Institute has trained 170,000 conservatives in the intricacies of political campaigns and media relations. Morton Blackwell says we're about to enter a very different phase of the presidential nomination process. Up to now, it's been mostly words, speeches, debates, interviews, position papers, and some campaign ads. But in just a few weeks, contests will begin in which the states will decide on delegates and what candidates they will support. Mr. Blackwell points out that this race will become a test of each candidate's ability to identify supporters and organize them to participate personally in the primaries and conventions. It is a massive undertaking for a candidate to pull together and organize the supporters needed to win nomination contests in enough states to win their party's nomination. Some candidates will not be able to manage this. Things are going to happen very quickly. The Iowa caucus is February 1st, followed that month by the New Hampshire primary, the South Carolina primaries, and the Nevada caucuses. March 1st is Super Tuesday, on which 12 states will choose their delegates. And by the end of March, well over half of the states will be done. More than in recent years, candidates have the ability to amass lots of delegates quickly. The ones with more money and organization will be better able to take off if they do well in the early states. Politics is a tool. Believing Saint, you can use the system to influence who is nominated for president, or let others do that for you. Up to you. For Point of View, I'm Penna Dexter.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
If you'd like to join our conversation today, 1-800-351-1212. Let's head to Louisiana, KPAE. Ricky, what would you like to add to the conversation today?
Thank you, Kerby. Appreciate you having me. I got a little inside information on the Democratic Party. They're the masters of deception. Of course, they follow the Father of Lies rule books, why they're so good at deception. The two biggest secrets in the Democratic Party is that one, they leaked out on purpose. They want everybody to think that Hillary is afraid of Marco Rubio, like, oh, wow, I don't want to go up against. They want us to, because they want the establishment Republican to nominate Rubio to go against Hillary. But Hillary and Rubio is in the same camp, because you cannot tell me that a U.S. senator is that gullible, dumb, or ignorant to believe that if you vote for amnesty and we have 20 million new Democratic voters, it's going to wipe out the Republican Party in 5 to 10 years from now.
So who do you support? Who do you support? Do you support somebody?
Well, Ted Cruz. Obviously, Ted Cruz is the only. In fact, I read online a couple of days ago that actually Donald Trump's supposed to buy out and announce it this December that he's going to support Ted Cruz. But anyhow,
I have my doubts about it.
Me too.
But we'll see. Okay, let's, if we can, just before I run out of time here, I wanted to get your thoughts about some of the things that were said in the Republican presidential debate about the military and about the Muslim immigration. Any thoughts, Colonel West?
Well, when you look at the issue with Muslim immigration, I want to share a story that came out of Finland just last week, where they found two of the brothers that were there, part of the refugees, were ISIS executioners.
Yes.
They were stupid enough that they did not wear masks when they had the mass execution at Telefar Air Base, and so they recognized them. But on top of that, they had 300 others with ties to terrorism. So when I look at, first and foremost, we should not be allowing military-age males, and now, because of San Bernardino and what we know happened in Paris, probably military-age females, that 16 to 40, single-age males and females, we should not allow them to come in. And I think no one can disagree with you on that point. They just had someone picked up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, working with ISIS, and also at a pizza place in New York. So I think that we do have a serious situation where we cannot, and when you look at these videos, there's just too many of those military-age males that I see, and they're causing havoc right now in Europe. The other thing that came up, this whole thing about carpet bombing and what have you, we don't need to do that. That's something from World War II, where you just, put all the B-52s together, but you have to be smart in applying your air power. For anyone to think that air power can defeat an enemy by itself, I'll just refer you back to what happened in Bosnia with the Clinton administration. So we are going to have to work with coalition partners. I keep telling people, El-Sisi of Egypt, Abdullah of Jordan, the Kurds, and we can come up with a very effective ground force that can go in and root out ISIS. But that's not the end of it. As you all know, it starts in Africa with Boko Haram, with Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, Hamas, Hezbollah, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, all the cats and dogs to include ISIS, all the way up to the Philippines with Abu Sayyaf. This is a global conflagration that is ideological in nature, and it is against militant Islamism. It's not radical because it is part of the Quran, and we don't have time for the history lesson, but it is there. Yeah. And until we get leadership that is understanding of that, we're just going to continue to chase our tail.
I want to ask a question about one of the big topics during the debate, and that was the NSA collection of data and phone records. And it was a big debate between Rubio and Cruz mainly, and Rand Paul weighed in. But do you think that the vote that Ted Cruz took against that in the USA Freedom Act gravely harms our national security, as was stated by Rubio?
No, because the fact that we did not check the social media account of Ms. Tashfeen
That's
Malik.
worse.
Yeah, and so why do we need to go and throw a net over all the American people? I'm tired of taking my shoes off. That was because of Richard Reed. No one's going to come in with the shoe bomb anymore. We're not adaptive to understand this enemy and how they keep changing. So to say that we need to go after all Americans when we know where the problem is, look at what French President Hollande has done. He has gone and found these mosques and these imams that are preaching this hateful rhetoric and this militancy, and he shut them down. And that's the exact same thing that President El-Sisi has done in Egypt. Go back and look at the speech that he gave in January, where he challenged the Islamic clerics to stop with this hateful rhetoric. That's happening here. That's happening in our prisons when we have these imams going in and this hateful proselytization that they're doing. So we know where the problem is. We have groups like the Council for American Islamic Relations that is a front group for the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. They are an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest terrorist financing case in the country, the history of this country, the Holy Land Foundation. CARE has an office on Capitol Hill. And how fast was it that CARE came out and gave a press conference after the San Bernardino shooting? So I don't need you looking at my email, my phone records. Go and get CARE off of Capitol Hill.
Yeah. We have such an aversion to calling the enemy who the enemy is, worse now than some of the European countries.
It's far worse because, and that's the thing. This is not about a religion. This is about a theocratic, political, totalitarian ideology. All you have to do, and Kerby, you can link this, the Muslim Brotherhood Explanatory Memorandum. Yes. You can get it. 1994 was when it was written, found in an FBI raid in 2004. It lists everything they're doing, and it lists all the organizations. Guess which one of those organizations it is? It's CARE.
Yeah.
And so let's stop playing the political correct game. And so, no, I don't agree with these people that want to suppress our individual constitutional rights for the sake of political correctness.
We have posted some of that when Frank Gaffney's been with us as well. And that one other one I would add just before we let you go is it seems to me we should support our allies, and we do have some. I think the Kurds fit into that category. Absolutely. Egypt fits into that category. Jordan fits into that category. But we right now seem to be just reversed. We seem to snub our friends and encourage your enemies, like Iran, right?
Yeah, we got a nuclear deal with Iran, and I think the president touted that as one of his great accomplishments of this year. And coming back to the problem with Republicans, that nuclear agreement would have never gotten through if Senator Corker of Tennessee had not come in and created the legislation that did not count it as a treaty.
Wow. Got to let you go, but I might just mention that you are the head of the National Center for Policy Analysis, and if you click on his picture, you'll see that we have a link to NCPA, which is an outstanding organization. I was telling you before we got on the air how even back in the 1980s, I was quoting from some of your researchers. And, of course, you are the new head of the National Center for Policy Analysis. So go to NCPA and find out a little bit more. And, as a matter of fact, we've even posted one or two of your pieces today on our website. So it's a great relationship we have between us.
And it was 1 year ago when I just arrived here in Dallas that I came in and did a great interview with you. And let me just say this. I just made a donation to Point of View Ministries. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to keep this program on the air, and you need to support this ministry.
Well, I appreciate you making that donation during the last break. And so thank you for joining us here, and wish you a Merry Christmas. We do say Merry Christmas around here.
Yeah, we do. Merry Christmas, everyone.
We do need to take a break. And again, you've heard some of the stories here. Kelly shared that. Maybe in the next hour, he can talk about how he used to listen to Point of View and actually gave him an idea to begin to do all the things he's doing in the area of religious liberty. And when we come back, we're going to talk about that. What about that coach in Bremerton, Washington, who deserves a Scrooge Award, as well as a couple of other stories we have, and we'll continue down the road because there's a lot more to talk about. So if you'd like to know more about Liberty Institute or NCPA, or of course what we do here at Point of View, go to our website, pointofview.net. We have all those information, the links for all of that as well. As we mentioned just a minute ago, we are convinced that one of the ways to change this nation is to change lives. And we've been in the business for changing lives for so many years. And so if you can visit the website right now during the break, this would be a great time for you to make a year-end gift. Click on that button, and we would be very, very appreciative for your generous gift to us as well. Let's take a break. We have a lot more to talk about in the second hour. That's coming up right after this.
This time of year, it seems everyone's looking for a better, more affordable healthcare solution. But with costs rising and options limited, where do you turn? If you're a Christian, you turn to Medishare. It's not insurance. It's over 154,000 believers who share each other's medical bills. It's about half the cost of healthcare insurance programs. And it's fully acceptable under the law. Best of all, Medishare is based on the timeless principles found in God's Word. You never pay for things that go against your beliefs. Medishare is healthcare that fits your family and your faith.
Learn how thousands of Christians can help you save on your health care. For your free information guide, call 844-45-BIBLE. Not available in Montana. Medishare, affordable biblical health care. Call 844-45-BIBLE. That's 844-45-BIBLE.
A big thank you to members of Truth Team 360. You make this program possible. Not a member yet? Join today at pointofview.net. Click on Donate Now and become a monthly partner. Pointofview.net.
Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Second hour today on our weekend edition. Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford still with us. Colonel Alan West had to move on, but we're going to spend some time talking briefly about religious liberty and then take some of the phone calls. I know many of you want to address this issue of the spending bill, and that is certainly germane, but usually on a Friday we cover a lot of issues, and we spent most of our time so far talking about the omnibus spending bill for very good reasons, but normally on a Friday, we also talk about religious liberty. And if you go to our website, we have the story that has been something we've covered for a while, but also was featured last night by Megyn Kelly, in which you had Mike Berry, who's been on the program with us before, along with, of course, Joe Kennedy, who is the football coach in Washington, Bremerton, Washington. They were on the program. So if you'd like to see that, or like to see or read the summary of that, or if you'd like to find a link to Liberty Institute, we have everything you need right there on the website. But again, Kelly, even though you did explain a little bit in the first hour, people come in and come out. So tell the story again about Joe Kennedy and why you've decided to go to the EEOC over this issue.
Well, Joe Kennedy is 20 years a Marine, and then decided he wanted to coach after he got out of the service, and he made a commitment to the Lord. The first game, he said, as long as you allow me to coach, I'm going to go. Everybody goes to the middle of the field after the game and they talk to the other coaches. And he said, I'm going to start by going to my knee and thanking you for the privilege of coaching these young men. Mm-hmm. And so for over 7 years, that's what he's done. And all of a sudden this year, the school had ordered him not to do that, or they would fire him. And we said, well, if you fire him, we'll sue you. And so they've suspended him for going to his knee and thanking God after the game. And there have been times when other students have seen him there and they've gone there. There's other teams have gone there, but it's always been just him doing his thing. I mean, he's never asked anybody to go. It's just a commitment he made with the Lord. And anyway, what the school said was it was just outrageous. Not only could he not pray, they said anything he did that might give anybody the reason to think that he was ever doing anything religious would be a violation and he could be fired. So meanwhile, there's another coach who does another religion who goes out and does his thing, but that's okay. But he can't go and pray. And so the game when this really happened the last time with the threats and everything, and everybody was wondering, all the media's there, what's he going to do? He actually didn't want his boys to get in trouble. So while they were turning around singing the fight song, he went out by himself and went to his knee and prayed. And this is what he was suspended for, even though none of his players, nobody else.
Wow.
But the fascinating thing was he was down, his eyes were closed, had his, he felt people around him, and he was thinking, oh no, the boys have come and they're going to get in trouble. And when he opened his eyes, it was the other team had surrounded him. They had their arms around him and the coaches from the other team, and they were all praying with him. And I don't know, there's just something that's very American about that.
Very good.
And so, unbelievably, the school district won't even meet with us. I mean, we've tried to get them to sit down over and over again. Just, we figured we could talk this through and let them understand what he can do and what he can't. They refused to meet. They suspended him. And so really we have no choice but to, and in an employment situation, when you have discrimination on the basis of religion or race or sex, the first thing you have to do is file with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the federal government, And the last time we did this on behalf of if you'll remember, it was a teacher who was fired because a student asked him for a Bible, and he gave him this Bible, which, by the way, there's a Bible in the school library. The EEOC actually said this is religious discrimination, and they came on our side and said we will prosecute the school district. We will, be there on your side against the school district. And so we're hoping that's what's going to happen here, because I can't think of anything more clear. Can you go to the center of the field after the game? Yes.
Consider what you said, Kelly, about the fact that, you guys had to sue. But before that, you tried to talk to the district and explain to them what the law is, just so that everything could be, done peaceably and in order. But instead, they refused to talk to you.
It's just unbelievable. It really doesn't make any sense. And this is one of those things where you wished that the people that live in Bremerton, Washington, which is right outside of Seattle, it's a Navy town, it's good people. The whole community is behind the coach. I mean, even the atheist editorial writer for the Seattle newspaper wrote an editorial saying, if my kid was old enough, this is the coach I'd want him to have, because he appreciates his character, and that the coach is there because as 20 years as a Marine, he fought for freedom, and he's appalled that they would think they could take away somebody's free speech and free exercise of religion. He's like, this is what I fought for 20 years. He doesn't get it. And so that's why people of all faiths and no faith at all are behind the coach. The only people that are against him are, the school district officials, which is mind-boggling, I think, to most people.
So
and
what's
certainly
next?
Us. Well, next is for the EEOC to do their investigation, and then they will either they will say, well, it's going to take a long time, so we'll just give you the right to sue letter and you can file your lawsuit. Or, and I think this is what will happen in this case, they will do their own investigation and come to their own conclusion. And for instance, like the one we had in New Jersey with the teacher, Tutka, they could very easily say, this is religious discrimination, and therefore join our side in the lawsuit against the school district.
Let me just mention before we get to the break here that we also have the Scrooge Awards. And so one of the particular candidates for the Scrooge Award, of course, is Coach Joe Kennedy in Bremerton. Another one that I mentioned just in passing in the first hour, Dr. Eric Walsh, fired from being the district health director for his personal religious beliefs.
He's not the Scrooge.
No, he's not. But again, the people.
It's the Georgia officials in that case.
In each one. Then, of course, Mickey Weinstein, he does qualify as a Scrooge here for complaining about the U.S. Air Force Academy and the football players. Then you have one with the Department of Health and Human Services. And then, of course, the one that we talked about last week in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, where they fingerprint the pastor because they're too loud. Yeah. Singing worship songs.
Yeah. The lawnmowers are okay, but not a hymn. They exempted numerous things like lawnmowers, etc. Yeah, I would encourage people. We always pick that every year. We let them vote. Everybody vote. And so anybody who wants to can go to pointofview.net and they can see the Scrooge Awards there that we have at Liberty Institute. And they can go through the list and look at them, and we will announce a winner at some point of who wins the Scrooge Award.
We got just less than a minute, but
wonder who's going to win.
What's happened on the fingerprint? Did the pastors have a chance to have worship service last Sunday?
Well,
a lot of people have been asking me.
We tried to get a temporary restraining order, and the judge has recused himself, and the hearing has been set off to the 22nd. So, unfortunately, the church has to do their service in fear right now because the police show up, and they've already criminally gone after them twice and fingerprinted the pastor. So the hearing is set for December the 22nd. So, I mean, this is like something out of the movie Miracle on 34th Street, right? I mean,
or It's a Wonderful Life. Or something, yeah.
December the 22nd, there's a hearing over whether they will be protected to have their Christmas, service at the church. And so,
unbelievable.
3 days before Christmas.
Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll take your phone calls. Number you want to talk about the spending bill, if you want to talk about religious liberty. And Penna Dexter has some very important things to say about nominating a president. All that coming up right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
You know, after every shooting, there's the inevitable gun debate, but this time there are indications that the gun debate may be changing. Here are a few examples. First, there is growing evidence that law-abiding citizens have decided to ignore some of the gun laws. We all know that criminals buy guns on the black market and use them in crimes they commit, and there are stories of people living in places like the District of Columbia who willingly violate the gun laws because they rightly assume that being fined for the possession of a firearm is worth the risk when you consider the likelihood of being attacked or killed. Kevin Williamson cites some examples where law-abiding citizens decided to ignore the law. Connecticut passed a law requiring registration of certain firearms, but the citizens refused to comply. The city of Sunnyvale, California demanded that residents hand over firearms capable of accepting magazines holding more than 10 rounds. The citizens of Silicon Valley responded by turning in a grand total of 0 firearms. Second, some previous proponents of gun control are admitting that they really didn't understand the issue. One columnist admitted that she wrongly equated semi-automatic weapons with automatic weapons. She supported the assault gun ban because she felt that it was virtuous, and at least I was supporting something. Third, others are criticizing attempts to pass laws prohibiting anyone on a no-fly list from purchasing a gun. This would not have stopped the shooters in San Bernardino, the Colorado Springs gunman, the Charleston church shooter, and many others. On the other hand, it would impact the lives of many people who are on a no-fly list. Senator Ted Kennedy, Congressman John Lewis, journalist Stephen Hayes, and singer Cat Stevens have been on a no-fly list. These are just a few indications that the current gun debate might be different from the previous ones. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
This Christmas, bring home and share the gift of War Room on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital HD, available in stores December 22nd.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Dexter Kelly Shackelford is our weekend edition. If you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Let's take some phone calls. Head out to California first. KYCC. Don, thank you for calling today, and I appreciate you waiting so long. We just had so many things to say, but I'd love to hear what you have to say now.
I appreciate that. A couple things. I referee high school basketball, and I'm one of the only, if not the only referee that when a coach or players are shouting out from the bench using God's name in vain, like a coach did the other day, he was mad at his players and he yelled out Jesus Christ in a derogatory way. I was standing right there. I said, "Hey, coach, we won't have that in this game, okay? You won't use God's name in vain." And he kind of looked at me like, "What?" and
Never heard that before. Yeah.
I mean, I made it real clear, and I've actually had a couple other referees say, Don, I said, "Oh, no. We don't allow swearing on the court. So you start using God's name in vain," and it really baffled the guy, but he didn't use it the rest of the game. So,
good for you.
Yeah. My other, a couple other quick thoughts. Where are the churches rallying behind this coach? I can only imagine if 10 or 20 churches were to rally behind this guy in the city and hold the city officials responsible, and churches rallied behind this guy and showed up at his football game and all went out there and prayed with him, boy, it sure would throw their whole plan in disarray if they saw half of the city coming to the football game to go out on the field and pray with him. What would they do then?
Yeah, no, I mean, you make a great point. First, I'll point out the last game, he was not allowed to be on the field with the players. He was in the stands, the entire stand. There's pictures of it. The entire stands roped arms around him and each other and prayed.
Way cool.
So the community is behind. And then those young men came one by one off the field up into the stands with tears running down their face to hug their coach.
Good.
And
we're talking Washington State here,
which
is
know.
not exactly conservative.
But the point is so important that he's making because the principal is a Christian, the superintendent Christian, and they're kind of apologizing to him, kind of like, sorry, this is what they're being told to do. There's people on the school board that say they're Christian. Well, then where are they?
Yeah.
And it's
Come
as
on out.
Coach Kennedy said,
Sounds kind of like Congress right now.
Yes.
he said he was walking through the school and people at the administration would pull him over and say, "We're behind you."
Yeah.
And he's like, what does that mean? What courage is that?
Yeah.
And this is the problem. And we see this in our cases all the time. We will have a situation where they'll violate religious freedom. They'll take away somebody's clear freedom that they have. And the school district, even the school board, they'll say, we're all Christians. We all ran because we're Christians. But, the lawyer said we had to do this. The lawyer works for you. It's amazing how they allow themselves to be led around. I mean, the lawyer's going to make money now because you're fighting.
You know what I do when I'm standing up for truth in the marketplace like that, and people come up to me and whisper that they support me. I always say to them, "Why are you whispering?"
Yeah.
The liberals aren't whispering; they're shouting at us. Why not stand up? And I actually had a lady. She looked at me kind of perplexed. She goes, "You know what? You're right." And she stood and looked at the crowd and said, "I stand with this guy." and so, but that's kind of rare. My other question was, and I hope I get a good answer from this, but please tell me that the representatives in Congress, such as Representative Gomer, who's on the show every once in a while on your program, who I like, please tell me that those guys did not vote for this immoral spending bill. And if they did, we need to hold them accountable by calling them onto the show and saying, explain to me how you did this, because we support you, and over the years you're on our program, but you stabbed us in the back.
Yeah, well, Louis Gomer did vote no. So, again, I'll give credit where credit is due.
Good.
But, one of the individuals that has occasionally been on this program, Pete Sessions, voted yes. And, next time he's on, I think everybody have an opportunity to ask that question. But,
Absolutely.
But let's give credit where credit is due. Louis Gomer, and of course, I didn't really think he'd vote anywhere but no on this one. But that's some of the reasons why we have some of those individuals on the program, because, indeed, we have such agreement with them. But it's a very good question, and it's a question you need to maybe ask next time you can get on with, say, a Sean Hannity or something like that. Those are questions that really need to be asked of some of these people in positions of leadership.
Say they're conservative.
Yeah. How conservative are you when you voted for this?
That's what's frustrating with watching some of those shows like Sean and listening to Rush and them. Too often, they do not go after these conservatives like they should, and they may ask a hard question, but they don't follow up on the silly answer that the conservative gives them. They kind of let him go, and I'm going, no, go after him. Say,
you should be a radio host.
Well, I'll tell you, what everybody who's listening to this can do is, as you heard from Colonel West, who was in the Congress, they're going back home now. Okay? They had their vote. They're going back home for Christmas. Call whoever your congressman is. Call their office and say, what are the events? I know the congressman is home. When are the events, the local events where he's going to appear in public, to hear from his constituency, and go to those meetings and let them know what you think about this, because I think they're in the bubble in D.C. and they're not listening even to the people through the election results so far. You just wonder, what's it going to take? Somebody's got to shake them into reality or else they need to be replaced. But that's something everybody can do. There's very few people that show up at those things. The congressman tries to make themselves available. I mean, they want to, meet with their constituents and be there for events. And not a lot of people come, but you can go.
Yeah.
And you can let them know that this is exactly what everybody is trying to say. And I think they're saying it very clearly. If Donald Trump doesn't get your attention and Ted Cruz, then I don't know what is going to get your attention.
Yep.
Why are you missing the message? I mean, that's something everybody can do in their own district all across the country.
And I appreciate that. I do actually do that. I've taken on. We have a very liberal congressman here in our area, and I actually have talked to him personally. They actually do make themselves available, so I appreciate that. That's a good challenge that all of us ought to be taking that are listening to the program, is we ought to seek out these guys during these next couple weeks and walk up respectfully but say, his office. But yeah, I appreciate what you guys do, and you guys have done a great job this year. We appreciate it.
Don and I support you, and I'm not whispering it either. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Let's take another one real quickly. KAVX in Texas. Howard, what would you like to add to the conversation?
Don and I support you, and I'm not whispering.
Okay, I've got Howard's maybe on hold here.
Let me say something about Don's call. It's
Yeah.
a great call. He had made so many good points. And the first one about not whispering, I just want to address a little bit because, people whisper because they're afraid. And because Liberty Institute is out there, you don't have to whisper. In a sense, you can actually have help when you have an issue with religious liberty. And so people need to know that. We've got so many cowering folks out there, and you have actually the ammunition, if I can call it that. You have the backing and the support, and you just need to harness it. You need to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I'll point out this, not just, obviously we're helping Coach Kennedy, but we always work and get volunteer attorneys from the best firms in the country, the best law firms there are, to see if they won't want to get involved. And for Coach Kennedy, we have the firm of Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, which is one of the largest 10 law firms in the world, one of the most high quality. I mean, these are people who charge, over $1,000 an hour to many of their top people, all for free, representing Coach Kennedy. So we've got a whole team of people that are there, and the most high-powered folks you could find. So anyway, you definitely don't have to whisper.
Well, again, we've had Jeremy on, and he used to listen to Point of View when he was really young. You've listened to it as well. Of course, Michael Berry, we just mentioned his name just a minute ago. So, again, we've had such a great partnership with you at Liberty Institute. So, as I've said before, and I'll say it once again, I think every Christian should support at least one pro-life group and one religious liberty group, because these are two of the very foundational issues. And, Kelly, we've said this is going to be a religious liberty election. And
Absolutely.
I think it's also going to be an election about spending, too.
Yes.
So, and we know who's going to win those if indeed are those issues that will be very important in this election. Let's take a break. We'll take some more phone calls, but also Penna Dexter is going to talk about the process of nominating a president. All that coming up right after this.
Basketball is a team game, but when a player steps to the free throw line with 1 second remaining in a tie game, it comes down to one player with one ball and one goal. Put that shot through the hoop and carry the entire team to victory. Point of View is staring down the final seconds of 2015, and though we could focus on the negative things that happened, there were so many good things this year as well. Years ago, a 19-year-old woman started listening to Point of View. It educated her, it inspired her, and Michelle Bachmann went on to a notable career in the U.S. Congress. We could tell so many stories of those who are changing their community and changing the nation thanks to the work of Point of View and thanks to you who give. I'm handing you the ball for that final shot. Make it count. If you're concerned about America, invest in Point of View. Look for the Changing Lives, Changing the Nation banner at pointofview.net or give using the Point of View radio app, pointofview.net, or call 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Fun Laugh Hour. If you'd like to join us, it is Weekend Edition. Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford, and we have a lot more to cover, but somebody's been waiting for a while to join the conversation, so I wanted to get to him immediately. Howard, KAVX in Texas, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, sir, Kerby. Thanks for taking my call. I got a solution to how to fix this problem. It's called Fighting Fire with Fire. And they need to come up with an app that's called a parasite app, And whatever people, represents us out there, what they have done to us, deceiving us, they go on that list so people don't forget who they are. All you got to do is push it, and then you'll know. And,
well, Kelly's ready to have some of you come out there and run against these individuals in a primary race, right?
Yeah.
Man, I'm ready. I'm so ready, it's unreal.
I remember meeting a woman one time who was on the state board of the Texas Board of Education. And when I met her, I said, "Oh, it's great to meet you." And she said, "Well, I'm here because of you." And I said, "Because of me? What did I do?" And she said, "I spoke about something that was going on." And as a mom, she went down and was like, "Oh, surely not." And it was much worse than she thought. And she said, "I got to do something about this." And here it was a number of years later, and she was now in the State Board of Education. So I think it's that way for a lot of people, we all, when you think of the districts we live in and how many churches, there's some great people in those that we could, maybe the people in your church could look around and say, this person should be our congressman because they've proven their trustworthiness, their character, their qualifications by what I've seen in their lives. And then, we could have a dramatic change in Congress if people would do that.
Yeah. And
political art will work too.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's also like a good idea to kind of go back to the way, sort of the normal way of doing things, and that is people get concerned and they run for office, and then they run for higher office, and then they get more experience and they run for higher office, rather than looking at these people that have never been in office before to be our savior, and we aren't exactly positive how they're going to do things, and so, I think, state legislatures can be a good training ground for somebody who may run for Congress or the Senate or even the White House someday.
Well said, yeah.
And, I just, right now, the way things are, it's just a strange political year. And I know people are making a statement by who they're supporting out there. And it's an important statement to be made. But really, practically, we need to look at also the experience component.
I think that's important. I mean, you think people are going to do what they are going to say they do. And I think what a lot of people think is they think, well, they just weren't honest with me. No, I've talked to a lot of these people. They go to church. They say they believe like you do. They're going to stand on those principles, and they mean it.
And then the pressure comes.
They've never been in that situation.
Yep.
And it's different types of pressure. I mean, I think the most powerful pressure is everybody think of yourself, and if there's a group of close friends and you're sort of separate from everybody else, you kind of have some experiences together that make your group of 4 or 5 guys or 4 or 5 women or whatever, maybe it's your Bible study or your whatever. And when they tend to do something, you don't want to be the one that's like against the group, right? And that's what happens with, you're a congressman or you're a senator or you're in a very special group, and the pressure is sort of that pressure within each other there to not make trouble, to not, and so people don't think about that. But Penn is right that, the way you can know somewhat is, has somebody already been in office? Has the pressure come, and have they stood their ground? Which, of course, like for a Ted Cruz, I mean, that's why, that's a huge thing.
You know what he's going to do because he's done it.
He's been willing to be disenfranchised by everyone in his party if necessary to do the right thing and to do what he promised to do. That's what, if you see that, well, okay, this guy's going to do, he's not going to fold because of that. That pressure is not going to win over that person.
Yeah, when Dawn asked us about Louis Gohmert, I'm like, I didn't even have to look at the list. None of us did, because we knew what he would do. He's proven himself, and he suffered the consequences at times for standing up for things that have been important to conservatives and Christians.
Both of us and even Dawn mentioned a little bit about churches, and I might just mention that one of the things Family Research Council has encouraged churches to do is develop a cultural impact group. And so next week we're going to have Ron Kelly here because he's developed that at Prestonwood. They're going to revive this idea of an action lunch. Penna,
Right.
you remember the action lunches we used to do together?
Kerby and I used to help host and plan the action lunch at this huge mega church here in Dallas. And we know that, churches across the nation have very concerned members that can do and are doing the same thing. It's just wonderful.
And I love what, you mentioned Ron Kelly. I love what happened there. You had one of these city council deals where they're trying to push all the sexual orientation, gender identity stuff through, and you had about half the churches willing to speak out and the other half not willing to speak out.
Yeah.
And then, although the people got all the petitions and turned them in, they said, we're just not going to recognize these because these are invalid. Well, you've got a government that's out of control.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, when's the next election? It's in 2 months. How many? Oh, there's 2 people up. Okay. And now there's 2 new people, and there's going to be another election coming up, and there's going to be more people.
And one of those new people in one city around here is Ron Kelly, your guest
That's exactly right.
Yeah, so I'm bringing him in because he's actually helped develop this group that Family Research Council is encouraging other churches to do, but he's also been on the other side as a candidate. So, and he's going to have some of the people around the round table, so that's next week, and just, again, some real practical material. And speaking about practical, Penna Dexter's commentary is nominating a president, and I thought it would be good for us to sit back and just for a few minutes kind of understand this, because indeed this election is really important. And you also quote from Morton Blackwell. It's been years since we've had him on, but he says we're kind of entering into a different phase. Explain if you might.
Well, that's the part of this that I guess I'll bring forward. If people want to listen to my commentary, many people can hear it online during the next break.
Yes.
But Morton Blackwell is somebody I greatly respect, and he has actually been the head of the Leadership Institute, which he started and founded, and they have trained thousands and thousands and thousands of people to be candidates or to, support candidates, run campaigns. He trains conservatives in the mechanics of campaigning and also in handling the media. So he's watched a lot.
Yes.
And he says, okay, we've been in this part of the campaign for a while. We've had debates. We've had the polls. We have some ads going on. We've had all the media coverage of, various candidates, and most of it been focused on one candidate. Well, that's going to all change now. The rubber is going to meet the road in February. February, I think, 2nd is the first, February 1st. It's the first contest in a state, always is in the state of Iowa. And it's very compacted this year, much more tight than it has been in other years. It's starting later and ending earlier, so all the states are going to vote in a shorter amount of time than usual, which makes it important for a candidate to already have laid a lot of groundwork.
Yes.
If you had a candidate, for instance, say the Christians just elevated Mike Huckabee in Iowa and voted for him and he won. Well, it would be almost impossible for him to get the nomination because he doesn't have enough money and he doesn't have an organization, and there just isn't time to get that because right on the heels, 1 week later from Iowa is New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And then by the time February ends, we've also had caucuses in Nevada and also in South Carolina. And then in March you've got Super Tuesday. You've got all kinds of primaries, including 12 at Super Tuesday. And by the end of March, you have almost half of the states have already chosen their candidate that their delegates will support. So it's important. I mean, really, by now, there's only a few candidates that could probably get the nomination. There can't be any really big surprises. It would be impossible to get the funding quick enough. So just look at that when you're considering. It's a practical way to look at things. I know a lot of people want to say, well, God can raise up anyone. Well, people have to do their due diligence. So that's an important part of it. And I guess I just want to encourage people, in your state. I mean, you can say a lot by voting in the presidential race, but you can say a lot more by being involved in the primary process, by voting in the primaries or participating in the caucuses, which is what happens in Iowa. So I encourage you, this is an important election and your voice is outsized if you participate in the primaries because most people don't.
Yeah, Kelly, I was just thinking, too, when you go, you can vote twice. You can vote first in the primary, and then you can go to the precinct meeting and then help construct the actual platform. And I know you and Kathy Adams and others have actually sat on the national platform committee, but it all goes back to those grassroots, doesn't it?
Yeah, and this time especially, I bet there's going to be a lot of focus on those precinct meetings and the state parties, because if by some reason, and I don't think this will happen, but if you were to have one candidate not get a majority of the delegates, then it's going to go to the floor of the convention, and that'll be determined by who goes to the convention, which is determined all the way back to your precinct and up through your state party.
Again, be a delegate as well. So as Penna suggested, get involved in the primary. And if you have not heard her commentary, you can hear it right now online, because that's what we are going to play. And then we'll come back and take some more phone calls. All that coming up right after this.
Presidential primary season is just around the corner. An opportunity for everyday Americans to influence who ultimately gets elected next November. Citizens can participate in their state's primaries and caucuses to help choose the party's nominee. Those who do this, and also those who make financial contributions to candidates, get a bigger say in who's available to vote for in the general election. That's democracy, and it's a way people who care can really have an influence. Up to this point, the 2016 election and how it plays out has been controlled mostly by the candidates and the media. First, the candidates. There are so many of them. So many on the GOP side remain in the race. Some conservatives are afraid there continue to be too many. They're getting jittery, worried that the sheer number of people in the race, especially the number of candidates who appeal to conservative primary voters, will divide them and dilute their influence. Others worry that Republicans will land on a candidate too early, the wrong one. And then there's the media. Activists, anxious to get involved in backing a candidate, are watching polls and seeing who's getting the coverage. They're frustrated right now that they can't do much about any of it. That's about to change. Morton Blackwell has been in the thick of politics for nearly 40 years. His Leadership Institute has trained 170,000 conservatives in the intricacies of political campaigns and media relations. Morton Blackwell says we're about to enter a very different phase of the presidential nomination process. Up to now, it's been mostly words, speeches, debates, interviews, position papers, and some campaign ads. But in just a few weeks, contests will begin in which the states will decide on delegates and what candidates they will support. Mr. Blackwell points out that this race will become a test of each candidate's ability to identify supporters and organize them to participate personally in the primaries and conventions. It is a massive undertaking for a candidate to pull together and organize the supporters needed to win nomination contests in enough states to win their party's nomination. Some candidates will not be able to manage this. Things are going to happen very quickly. The Iowa caucus is February 1st, followed that month by the New Hampshire primary, the South Carolina primaries, and the Nevada caucuses. March 1st is Super Tuesday, on which 12 states will choose their delegates. And by the end of March, well over half of the states will be done. More than in recent years, candidates have the ability to amass lots of delegates quickly. The ones with more money and organization will be better able to take off if they do well in the early states. Politics is a tool. Believing Saint, you can use the system to influence who is nominated for president, or let others do that for you. Up to you. For Point of View, I'm Penna Dexter.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
I just mentioned those of you listening online just heard Penna Dexter's commentary. We play it at this time during the broadcast, and if you'd like to read it, it's on our website, pointofview.net, called Nominating a President. And before we take another phone call, Penna, it seems to me that, the Iowa caucus starts February 1st, Super Tuesday's March 1st. I mean, within a month, it could be over. Certainly by the end of March, it is over. So doesn't that say that some of those individuals that were at the kids' table, if you will, I mean, I hate to use that, but that's the illustration. George Pataki, Rick Santorum, Mike Huckabee, nice individuals. We've had Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee on this program many times before, but they don't have a chance, do they?
Yeah, I think it's time to winnow the field. I don't know how quickly it's going to happen. And if Donald Trump doesn't win Iowa, I wonder what he'll even do. He doesn't like to lose, so we'll see.
Yeah.
I think the general consensus of those who, are pretty sophisticated in knowing how things work is that if Donald Trump wins Iowa, Donald Trump probably sweeps everything.
He runs the table.
And so the question is, who can beat Donald Trump in Iowa? And the only person that's really given a chance, and in fact at this point is probably given the likelihood of beating him in Iowa, is Ted Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
And so let me explain that to the people who are listening. If you're Donald Trump and you win Iowa, you're going to win New Hampshire. I mean, he's right next to New Hampshire. Okay, he's going to win New Hampshire. So think about in the past who you can think of who has won Iowa and New Hampshire. I mean, the momentum going at that point will be like a freight train. Mm-hmm. And then add the fact that he's already, the Monmouth poll is showing 40-something%. So that's what'll happen there. But again, if Ted Cruz wins Iowa, then there'll be a momentum in Iowa for Ted Cruz. Trump will be still favored in New Hampshire. But then you have South Carolina.
Yeah,
and South Carolina
everything.
Tells you a lot about where it goes. And you could easily have Cruz catch off in South Carolina and have a lot of momentum going right into those southern states, Texas being one of them that he's from. So most people that's what they're saying. I mean, and some of the reason is because Iowa is not like a popular vote thing. Okay. It's a caucus.
You get together.
You have to meet. Yeah. You have to go out on a cold night usually
and be willing to stay
hours.
there for
really
hours
yes.
before you can vote for your candidate, because you got to argue for your candidate. You got to. Well, and so you have to have a real grassroots campaign there. You have to have people everywhere. You have to have been working on this a long time. And the reality is,
Cruz has that. And
Cruz has that.
Trump does not.
Trump has a really good person leading his, and he's going to have some good stuff. He hired one of the best people.
And he doesn't have what Ted Cruz has, I don't think.
I think Ted Cruz has better, but if you look at the other people like the Rubios and everybody else, even if they have popularity level, they do not have that infrastructure laid down. So that's why most people think Cruz really has a chance, and now he's actually ahead of the polls there. So that's a lot of people are looking, is Trump going to just run the whole thing and it's going to be over, or is there going to be a match? And they think that that'll probably depend upon Ted Cruz.
Let's take some phone calls and give you a chance to join our conversation. Keith, KAVX in Texas, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, sir. Hello, Kerby. I was just calling in, brother. I'm a pastor down in East Texas, and I was just listening to the program, and I was seeing the other night with Donald Trump and all them, and I was just thinking, brother, that if we just follow Christ and follow his teachings, then this country will be fine. We do have a problem with ISIS and all the other terrorist stuff that's going on. But if we come together as one unit in one church, I think that we'll be fine. And that's the comment that I had, brother.
Sure. There's another part about that. I wish we'd come together and re-register to vote. The other day I mentioned it. Let me mention it again. 39 million born-again Christians did not vote in the last election. That's George Barna. And
the last presidential
election. Right. And of that 39 million, 26 million were registered to vote and did not vote. 13 million were not registered to vote. And so the first step is to look around in your own congregation here and see who's not registered to vote. Right?
I've always said before, one of the reasons I'm not a pastor is because if I were a pastor, what I would do is I would tell my congregation that I can't find out who you vote for, and I'm not really interested in finding out who you vote for, but I can find out if you vote.
Yes.
Because I can take everybody who's on our church list, and it's all in the records as to whether you voted or not. And if you don't vote, then, we will be sitting down and I will ask you, why you're not fulfilling your stewardship responsibility in representing Christ in this area of our society. I mean, again.
So talk about following Christ.
Yeah. I mean, every church should be, this is, we have the ability to choose good or evil in our leaders. Most of our brothers and sisters don't even have that freedom. And to just throw it away is incredibly irresponsible. If if those who know the truth, and God has given the Bible, the Word of God, and the truth, if they refuse to go and stand for the truth, other people will walk into that vacuum. And the evil and the destruction and the pain and the suffering that will occur will be because of those who had the truth that did not do their stewardship responsibility to stand for the truth. And, it's not that difficult. I mean, it's not even like it was in Afghanistan where they actually had it on their finger and might be killed. I mean, it's so easy for us to do, and yet the body of Christ is not doing this. I mean, half of the body is registered and then half of those vote. And if you just change, let's say you change 5% or 10%.
That would make such a difference.
Every moral issue we talk about would be gone from the national scene as far as a public policy issue, abortion, you name it. And so really it lands back, we tend to think, those bad people. I mean, really you got to point at yourself. There's plenty of people with the truth, and it's just a matter of them being faithful. And now I know we don't have time. One of the things that I think would be interesting to talk about would be the Donald Trump dilemma for the evangelicals. I know you've got an article
on
for
people to read,
because there are people who struggle with that because
what about
some of his language and some of his lifestyle and all those things, and which is again why I think that Ted Cruz, Donald Trump offers you some different alternatives. But if we represent Christ, then we could. Just like the pastor who just called said, I mean, everything would change.
I want to do you one better. I was sitting next to an African-American leader, and he said in his church when he was growing up, this is Birmingham, Alabama, the pastor actually called people forward if they were not registered to vote.
Wow.
So they wouldn't sit down individually. They actually put people on the spot in front of the entire congregation. So
and every pastor can do that. Every pastor can pass out registration cards.
Yes.
I mean, they're just little note cards. You just fill out your name and address, and you drop them in the mail. It doesn't even cost you a stamp. Every pastor could make sure they had that so that everybody was registered in their church, so that they were at least ready to represent Christ in the voting booth.
And we will put a link here very shortly in which you could register online. And also we've put up one in the past where you can make sure that you are registered, because if you move, some people don't change their registration. Right. And so that's important too. Penna?
So I guess the last word would be informed as a voter, be shrewd, and be very practical as you go out and vote.
Let's get those 13 million registered to vote, and then let's get that other 26 million didn't vote last time out and voting, and that would change everything, wouldn't it?
Oh, no doubt. And then I would encourage people over the next few weeks, when your congressman is at home, go to pointofview.net, make sure, how did your congressman vote? And if your congressman was, which is likely true, is one of the ones who voted for all this, then you need to go to express your disappointment with that and say, well, I'm not going to be able to support you anymore.
One more resource I wanted to mention real quickly. You have an article that you've written over the years called Churches and Elections. You go to libertyinstitute.org or we have it at pointofview.net, either way. And that tells you what your freedoms are. Basically, you have a lot more freedom than most pastors even realize.
Absolutely. Yeah. They can do whatever pastors are called to do, which is educate their people about the issues of the day. And how does the Bible play to this issue that's being talked about in public? How does the Bible talk about how we pick our leaders? I mean, there's all kinds of scripture on that. But then they can also just make sure they're registered. They can make sure that they get nonpartisan voters guides that tell them where everybody stands. So then they can have good information on the down the ballot candidates that they might not know as much about.
Well, it's been a great program. Merry Christmas to both of you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And again, I want to thank Andrew and Catherine and Chris. We've mentioned we've got a number of programs next week, so hope you join us then. Have a great weekend. See you back here on Monday.
This time of year, it seems everyone's looking for a better, more affordable healthcare solution. But with costs rising and options limited, where do you turn? If you're a Christian, you turn to Medishare. It's not insurance. It's over 154,000 believers who share each other's medical bills. It's about half the cost of healthcare insurance programs. And it's fully acceptable under the law. Best of all, Medishare is based on the timeless principles found in God's Word. You never pay for things that go against your beliefs. Medishare is healthcare that fits your family and your faith.
Learn how thousands of Christians can help you save on your health care. For your free information guide, call 844-45-BIBLE. Not available in Montana. Medishare, affordable biblical health care. Call 844-45-BIBLE. That's 844-45-BIBLE.
A big thank you to members of Truth Team 360. You make this program possible. Not a member yet? Join today at pointofview.net. Click on Donate Now and become a monthly partner. Pointofview.net. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.